Represent Black New Yorkers for Educational Excellence, Mr. Akinlabi Mackall.
You didn't ask anybody else if they could get it.
Yes, I did.
Good afternoon. I've recently been told that using the term brothers and sisters is old school. May I go old school with you today, brothers and sisters? Now, Charmaine, take that. Okay. I think I was here to fill a couple of different quotas today. No, not that one. You know, the one where somebody was actually in school 60 years ago when Brown versus Board of Education came through. I was in kindergarten in Miss Ferguson's class, and I think she would be proud of me today because over that time, I have continued to respect what an excellent and quality education could bring. And I certainly got one there. A dozen years ago or so, Dr. Donald Smith, Dr. Asa Hilliard, and a number of other people worked on what they called a curriculum of inclusion, of cultural respect, and one of excellence. In order to make that curriculum work, they understood that it couldn't be a curriculum for only some of the students in the school system. It had to be one for all of the students. It had to have equity with excellence. It had to be excellent with equity. When you talk about education for all students being excellent, then we address what we know is a fundamental human right, and that is a quality education. In New York City, we have come to realize that that is not possible without a struggle for change. We were not disappointed in the election of Mayor de Blasio. We recognize that of the choices put forward, he represented one that had better options. However, we were strongly opposed to any position in support of mayoral control of the New York City public schools. How many of you are familiar with this issue of mayoral control of public education? Then you know it is closely linked with most of the things we've talked about today, although we haven't hit mayoral control. It's closely linked with the issues of privatization, closely linked with the question of using the public schools as a place to refurbish an entrepreneurial class known as the charter school leadership. You also know that the question of excellence and college readiness have been made to be one and the same. And as some people today have pointed out, that is not at all the same. Those of us who are educators, I'm talking about teachers, those formal educators, and all the rest of us, parents, surrogate parents, all of us who understand that the quality that we want in our schools goes beyond academics, but it is certainly inclusive of academics. So what we're asking those of you who are not from New York City, as well as those of you who are from the city, is to consider this: mayoral control must go. Consider that. The issue of mayoral control is one in which we, the people, are not represented in the highest decision-making sections on the question of education. It's a situation where we, the people, must now rise up. We heard a young man earlier who was a student who suggested that there needed to be a revolution. Well, quiet as is kept, and it should not be so quiet. That is exactly what is needed. Fundamental change in the way education is done in New York City is what we see. As As a member of Black New Yorkers for Educational Excellence, and also a member of SEEDS, and as a member of the Coalition for Public Education, we have been working to mobilize parents. Parents understand that their children are very important. I have not met one parent in the 5 years that we have been working through this effort that felt that their child was unimportant. In fact, most of them sacrifice on a daily basis. They do not have the facility to stay at home when they need to. They do not have the opportunity to come to evening programs without real challenges, but they get there. So what we're asking you to do is to help parents as we mobilize ourselves to empower ourselves. Specifically, what we're talking about is, instead of an anti-democratic mayoral control system in which the panel for educational policy makes the decisions, and no matter how eloquent our students are, and no matter how heartfelt the demands of concerned educators were, and no matter how important parents thought that the situation of keeping the schools open were, this panel closed them and rubber stamped the previous mayor's decisions just like that. We think that the system is still up and running, and we think that it's a decision that the people have to make. So let's transform the existing system with one in which you, the people, make the decisions. Specifically, support these three things, if you will, and there will be mobilizations regarding this. One is for a curriculum that is culturally relevant, that is mandatory Black studies and cultural studies, studies for the indigenous population, one in which our children in every school, whether in a vocational program or in the so-called specialized high schools, understand the value of all the communities that have come forward, where there's less likely disrespect and attacks and bullying, because the cultural studies have been developed and taught from pre-K through 16. That is through high school and the specialized schools. We also ask you to support the motion to bring that about, which means that we have to surely convince those elected officials who say they want our votes that the process that's in place now is inappropriate and not acceptable. Number one. Number two, if you, as people in New York City and out, as we mobilize to take back our schools and to take back our system, we want you there on the front lines with us. So as we mobilize parents, we will also work with students. We think high school students, is this a novel thought? Before I get off, high school students should be among those who are concerned with the governance of their school system. High school students involved in education, what a concept. They might even take school much more seriously across the board. So in closing, I'll just ask you to consider all of these things, and as the person before me said, King, no more, he's got to go. Mayoral control, no more, it's got to go. And on the gubernatorial side, we say, Cuomo, no more, Cuomo.